The protected territory of the Dniester Canyon National Park. Here, the banks of the Dniester River, surrounded by high cliffs, are a true wonder of nature. The species composition of plants, animals, and birds of this oasis is as unique as the landscape of the Dniester River with its marvelous serpentine bands and picturesque meanders. The pride of the national park is the famous slope of the Dniester Canyon, overlooking the town of Zalischyky. This small town is surrounded on all sides by the Dniester cliffs. They retain warm air, thus creating the so-called sub-tropic effect. The weather here constantly changes. These lands have long been inhabited by people. The settlements on this territory were first mentioned in the chronicles of 1340. In ancient times, the Dniester connected the rich Byzantine Empire with the princely city of Halych. The path of the trading merchant caravans went through this territory. Before a long journey to Turkey, merchants stopped to rest here under the thickets of hazelnut trees. That's why the town was called Zalishchyky. Merchants sailed on rafts filled with different goods along the Dniester. A ship was built with a payload of 200 centners of cargo. This is how trade in the town was revived. Construction did not lag behind. Wood was fused even from the headwaters of the Dniester River, from the town of Sambor. In addition to numerous artisan workshops, a manufactory which produced very fine cloth was opened.
At the
end of the 17th century up to beginning of the 18th century, a large Jewish community was formed in Zalishchyky. A wooden synagogue was built on this place. But in 1863, the synagogue and 4 prayer houses, chapels, burned to the ground in a devastating fire. Restoration of the synagogue took 20 years. The Jews then accounted for the majority of the town's population. They were mostly artisans and traders. Government posts were occupied exclusively by Poles. Their parish was the Church of Saint Stanislav, built in 1763 in the traditional Baroque style. To this day adorns the central part in Zalishchyky. The town was constantly developing as a resort. The warm Dniester River, clear water, and special climatic conditions are the main attributes of this town. The townspeople seen this spring 2 to 3 weeks earlier than in the nearby villages. The fruits and vegetables in Zalishchyky always ripened early. They were exported to different parts of the Austro-Hungarian Empire starting from 1870. The region was famous for its winemaking. Achievements in this industry were demonstrated at the annual celebration of winemakers. The entire Polish nobility came together in Zalishchyky to taste the best varieties of wine. By 1895, Zalishchyky became a climatic resort of the European level. The Polish aristocracy created all the conditions for a comfortable stay for visitors. Even a direct railway line from Warsaw to Zalishchyky was built. Vacationers traveled to this Ukrainian resort town in luxurious comfort. Indeed, there was a high-speed train with luxury cars that traveled to this Ukrainian resort town. In 1897, the railway bridge was built, which connected Bukovina with Podillia and Zalishchyky. By rail, one could travel very quickly to Lviv, Krakow, and Warsaw. For example, the trip to Lviv on this train was a mere 2.5 to 3 hours. If to compare, today it takes 4.5 hours to travel the distance of 120 kilometers to Ternopil. Promenade streets, horse clubs and luxurious mansions surrounded by flower beds distinguish what was called the Zalishchyky Riviera of that time. Restaurants and shops opened up there. Zalischyky struggled to become a real, though young resort town. In the Podillia tourist house, you could stay for a night for 1 zloty a day. More wealthy vacationers paid 3.5 zloty for a room, albeit in more respectable hotels. Moreover, visitors to the town had a choice as the entire bank of the Dniester River was built up with boarding houses. Until now, local people talk about 2 wonderful and well-groomed beaches on the banks of the Dniester River, the Sunny Beach and the Shady Beach, with golden sands and crystal clear water. Now we're in a place where there was once a beach, which was called the Shady Beach. Here the sun shines brightly until 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Those wishing to rest under the hot rays all day preferred the sunny beach. Then there was a flat beach strewn with coarse-grained sand and small pebbles. It was possible to sunbathe all day long throughout the summer. There were small vessels on the river, and the local entrepreneurs offered boat trips on the river for vacationers. In the evenings, vacationers strolled along the Dniester embankment, attended theatrical performances, and visited shooting and entertainment clubs. The park along the river, founded in the 18th century, has been preserved to this very day. This oasis in the center of the former resort. Today it is one of the richest Dendro parks in the region. Zalishchyky Park is a part of the protected area of the Dniester Canyon National Park. More than 30 rare species of lianas, shrubs and trees grow here. A Japanese safflower grows behind my back. The trunk of our safflower has an irregular shape. It is twisted and uneven. This is because it is more than 100 years old. The park employees take care to protect the rare tree from external factors of influence. There is also a huge jingo two-bladed tree behind the safflower. This species has been preserved since the prehistoric period. Leaves of its ancient ancestor 150 million years ago served as nutrition for herbivorous lizards. This tree is over 100 years old. The peculiarity of this tree is that it reproduces sexually. In order to have offspring, there must be 2 different sexes. The sex of this particular tree is unknown. At the entrance to the park, there is a palace with an original colonnade and an outhouse. Its history begins in the late 18th century. In 1790, Prince Józef Poniatowski bought 5 hectares of land on the banks of the Dniester River in the town of Zalischyky and built an estate with a small palace. And in 1810, the building became the property of Ignacy Brunitsky. The new owner finished the construction of the palace, decorating with 2 lateral rizaluds in the empirical style. Since then, more than 200 years have passed, and over all this time, the outer appearance of this palace never changed. Only with age it grew old and became dilapidated. Here high-ranking officials and even crowned people visited this place. Austro-Hungarian Emperor Franz II also visited this palace during his trip to Galicia. To earn the support of the emperor, Brunitsky remade the interior in the image and likeness of the Caesar's residence Schönbrunn in Vienna. Caesar was so impressed that he was ready to fulfill any desire of the master of the palace. Brunitsky did not lose his head and asked him to give him the title of a baron. The land prospered and life always thrived here. In spring and summer, the local population doubled due to the number of visitors. The blessed banks of the Dniester River served as a haven of shelter for monks and hermits. On the left, we see a monastery of the 17th century. there lived a monk named Kuksha in the 50s of that decade, who remembered Zalishchyky. Here I am like on Mount Athos. The olives are blossoming, and there is my dear Jordan River. He referred to the olives as apricots or morels, and the Dniester River reminded him of the Jordan River. The Zalishchyky monastery stands on the cliffs of the high right bank of the Dniester River, surrounded by forest. It is believed that it was founded by the Orthodox monks of Manyawa. They came here and were then chased out by the Poles. Under the monastery mountain, there is a small cave of karst origin and a healing spring nearby. As legend has it, the monks came here after seeing a wonderful glow to the right of Ivan Kupala. These monks were named Teodosi and Vicenti. They found a cave as a sanctuary for themselves. During the First World War, after a cannon shot struck right at the foot of the cave, the front wall caved in. Now only the central part of this holy place is accessible to the public. The entrance to the cave was so low that the monks had to crawl into it. They covered the floor with hay and lived in their so-called monastery all year round. The news of the healing spring and the wonderful fire that every time lit up on the feast of Ivana Kupala rapidly spread throughout the locale. Monks gradually settled in this monastery cave. Over time, a chapel with a bell tower appeared, and then the Church of St. John the Divine was built. The church was built in memory of miraculous salvation. A merchant named Theodore Preda was passing by. He had lost his way at night while walking from the road and was overtaken by a terrible thunderstorm. After being struck by lightning a second time, he faced certain death. Together with his horse, he almost fell from the mountain, but a wonderful light saved him from imminent death. The merchant decided to build a church in this place in honor of St. John. The temple was built in 1768 in the spirit of the best architectural style. Until now, not a single crack appeared in these walls. Even the rocky, uneven terrain and the underground waters that wash away the foundation did not pull down the edifice. Vertical supports hold the walls and the roof. In short, the church is some kind of a defensive structure. It is very beautiful and cozy inside the temple, which the monks had restored in the olden days. The church was in fact a defense fortress for the monks. Behind this heavy door and its mighty bolts, the monks repeatedly escaped danger during wars and persecutions during the times of the Soviet regime. Now in the monastery there is a building of the Brethren and the Church of St. John the Divine. Approximately 5 monks live there. There are novices and higher monks who hold ritual church masses. The picturesque landscapes, the clear waters of the Dniester River and the rich nature, all this creates an aura of attraction for the small town on the banks of the Dniester River to this very day. Boat trips along the Dniester have been replaced by alloys on rafts and catamarans, and tourists now prefer beach recreation to learn the history and the natural riches of the region. The Zalishchyky resort today has been transformed into a popular tourist center, so travel with us to discover the amazing secrets of undiscovered Ukraine.